Hi everyone, it's John from What Up, and welcome back to another video. This will be my breakdown of episode 4 of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time show. What we're going to do is we're going to go through each and every scene in it, we're going to break them down, I'll explain a couple of things, we'll talk about differences from the books, and maybe give some further explanation for non-book readers and what some of the scenes could mean. Now, if you're new to the channel, make sure you click the subscribe button and the notification bell. I'm putting out a ton of Wheel of Time content right now, and you don't want to miss any of it. Alright, now before we get into the video, spoiler warning. In this video, I'm going to talk about certain elements of episode 4 of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time show. So if you haven't seen the first 4 episodes, I'm going to spoil those. And if you haven't read at least the first 3 books, that's The Eye of the World, The Great Hunt, and The Dragon Reborn from Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, I'm going to spoil elements from all 3 of those. So be forewarned. Alright, with that being said, let's get on to the video. Now, there's a little bit of a twist here. Essentially, we get to see a softer side of Logain, the dragon himself. So in the opening sequence of episode 4, we have this scene. We've seen it teased before, but essentially it's Logain, but this particular scene is our first really good look at the male half of the true source being used, which is fantastic. So that male half of the One Power, Saiyan, is tainted and shows up as a black swirl on top of the white power. Now, we're going to stop it here, and I want to talk about a few different things with this on screen. So, when I said this is a little confusing for non-book readers and book readers alike, it's because these scenes weren't in the books. So they were alluded to, they were talked about, but they happened off-page. Our first real look at Logain happened in The Eye of the World when he was paraded through Camelin after he was captured. Now, he wasn't gentled yet at this point. He hadn't stood trial, but he was captured. Rand seen him from atop the Royal Palace garden wall, and then he fell back into the guard, and that's where they had the whole meeting with Elaine, Gowan, Galad, Morghese, and Elida. So we get to meet the royal family of Andor, and a really important scene, a massively important scene in my opinion in the first book, and my favorite scene, one of my favorite scenes in the series. However, they decided that they're not going to include that, and they're going in a completely different direction for the show. It does work, what they're doing, I do like it, although I am a little sad not to see Camelin in the first season. Now, instead, what we're getting here is Logain's backstory. So, what happened in the books, if you read the companion and all the other little tidbits about Logain in the wikis, essentially he was a Gelden noble, and when he proclaimed himself the Dragon Reborn, he was stripped of his lands and his titles because, let's face it, the king was kind of mad because he's proclaiming himself the dragon. In the show, what it is it showcases him and the king talking, and instead of hurting the king, he heals him and said there's a place to decide even for his enemies, which is fantastic foreshadowing for things that are going to happen later on in the series, because they did happen later on in the books. Now, I won't spoil too much for you because I did say there's no spoilers for later on. However, this is a really good, I guess, early look at how the dragon's going to operate, the actual dragon that proclaims himself, because that's what he does in the books. He basically approaches the monarchs and holds out the carrot at first, and then if that doesn't work, he'll use the stick. But in this case, Logain won the king over, and later on in this episode, we see the king actually fighting for him. Now, the other thing I want to mention is this. So what we're seeing here is we see 2 shadowy figures. They look like they're made up out of the One Power behind Logain. Now, there's a ton of theories about these shadowy figures, although I think we can probably safely say it's most likely Logain's madness, because we've only seen one other instance of madness so far in the show. That was in the very opening sequence of the first episode, and that was a man who's speaking to someone who wasn't there that kind of disappeared, and he used the One Power as well. I think they're going to showcase this fact, the fact that they're talking to people that aren't there, as one of the main, side effects of using the One Power for men. Now, there's 2 figures here. One of them is Alusha Salid, played by Rebecca Tanwin. We know that for sure because she was cast, and she's credited for that. There's a second gentleman there. I don't know who does the voice or plays the character or the mocap for the character, and I don't know who that is. There's been a lot of speculation that these could be Forsaken that are talking to Logain, guiding him, making him do different things. I think, personally, this is probably just showcasing his madness, because later on in the episode, he does say that he talks to every other dragon that has come before him. Now we get into the Aes Sedai camp, and essentially here's our first look at the character Karina. Now Karina Nagashi is a Green Sister who died off-page. So she essentially isn't really in the book series at all. She's mentioned within New Spring a couple of times, and she's mentioned to have been killed by the Black Sisters. So essentially the Black Aja got a hold of her, and they killed her at sea. She is showcased a little bit more heavily in this episode at the very least, and again, We said full spoilers for the episode, so I can say she dies, because she does die by Logain's hand later on. But I think this was done for a couple of different reasons. So one, there was a whole lot of speculation before these episodes dropped that they were going to incorporate aspects of New Spring, flashbacks, things back when they first found out they were looking for the Dragon Reborn, maybe when Lan and Moiraine met, and things like that may still happen. However, we're meeting Karina in the current timeline, the present day, so to speak, in the series, and she's healing Moiraine's wounds. Now, I think they introduced her into the series, and I hate to say it, but really as a throwaway character to showcase what happens when an Aes Sedai dies, because her whole storyline in this episode was very short, and it basically didn't build up a whole lot other than she explained some things. She explained some politicking between the different Ajas. She explained a little bit about Moiraine's backstory, and then Logain killed her. And when Logain killed her, we've seen her warder, Stefan, played by Peter Franzen, basically kind of go insane with rage like warders do in the books. Not quite the same, and we'll get to that when we talk about that particular scene, but I think the whole reason for her being here was to showcase how a death would affect a warder, and basically to bring someone forward from the story to die that has consequences, but not major ones. Alright, so now we see Logain in his cage. This is after he's captured, so we're not seeing anything from the fall of Geldin to this point. He's just already been captured. He's being held in a cage, and he has 2 Aes Sedai watching him. So these are some departures from the books. Now, all of this storyline, basically from here to the end of the episode, with the exception of parts of the Grinmos farm and parts of the Tinker storyline, which we'll talk about when we get to them, none of this happened in the book series. This is all completely different. It's veered off from the book series. The end result, I think, is the same. However, they're doing it in a completely different way that maybe worked a bit better for the showrunner and the writers. So what we have here is we have 2 Aes Sedai shielding him. Tower Law states that a man who can channel shouldn't be gentled right away unless he's threatening the lives of the sisters, and it's really the only way out. What's supposed to happen is they're supposed to capture him, hold him, shield him, take him to the tower for trial. After the trial, then he's gentled. Now, tradition states that at least 6 sisters hold the shield on a man who can channel at all times, and they have to physically hold the power and not tie it off. If 13 sisters are holding that shield, it's completely unbreakable, and there's nothing you can do no matter how strong you are. Now, in the series, in the show, the big change we're seeing in this scene here is they're saying that 2 sisters, 2 of the strongest sisters, so what they're saying is Karina, Liandrin, and Alana are essentially the only sisters strong enough to hold Logain, and then when Moiraine joins them, she is as well, and they're working in pairs, in shifts, and it takes 2 of them to hold him at all times. Big difference from the books. And essentially, you see this later on in the episode, he breaks free. Maybe there is no real tradition of 6 sisters holding the shield. Maybe we're not going to see 13 holding a man who can channel be the ultimate number. Maybe it'll be a lot less. And I think that's because, well, let's face it, less people having to hold a shield, less people for tradition, less actresses on the screen, less of a paycheck, cuts into the budget. I think they did that on purpose, and they're kind of making everything just a little bit smaller and less numbers for that reason. Now, it could be completely coming from left field here, so let me know in the comments down below what you folks think. Do you think that they've reduced the number from 6 as tradition to 2 just to kind of showcase the main actresses instead of hiring a whole bunch of featured extras to do this? Now, we had a couple of short scenes here. The first one was with Perrin and Egwene to basically explain who the Tinkers are and where they're going. We find out they are going east towards Tar Valon. That's a good thing because essentially that's where everyone seems to be heading in this season. And we also find out a little bit about their history. We talk with Aram. We get to meet him, and he is a character from the book. So we're going to stop here for a second, and we're going to talk just a bit about the Tinkers and the changes. So, like I said earlier in this this video, there's only a couple of things in this entire episode that parallel the books. The first is Perrin and Egwene are with the Tinkers. That completely happens in the books. Happens in a much different way, however. There's a gentleman by the name of Elias. He can speak with the wolves. He meets Perrin and Egwene in the wilderness, kind of leads them to the Tinkers, talks about a lot of it there. There's a big exposition dump where he talks about the Tinkers and explains things that are going on, talks about the wolves with Perrin, and basically shows Perrin that he can speak with the wolves, and that starts him basically on his journey to do so. So far, we've seen little snippets here and there of foreshadowing that Perrin could speak with wolves. We've seen it in his dream. He met them outside the camp and they licked his wounds, but we haven't seen anything really concrete yet. Also, in the show, they stumbled upon the Tinkers themselves. There is no Elias. Now, I have it on good authority that Elias will be showing up in Season 2, but he'll be amalgamated with a second character. That's most likely because, although Elias is an important character to some of the fans, he's really not that big of a character in the grand scheme of things. And if you hire someone for maybe 10 minutes of an episode in the first season and tell them they have to come back later on, maybe in Season 5 or 6, it's probably not going to work out. So he's being combined with a second character for Season 2, and they're going to do something a little bit different. Now, this next scene here that we get after the Tinkers is we see Matt and Rand basically on the run from Breen Spring with Tom. Now, they come up to a farm here, and we're going to showcase some of the farm scenes later on with the Grinwells. Again, this doesn't happen exactly this way in the books, but it's the only other scenes that kind of parallel what happens in the books. Rand and Matt do show up at the Grinwell farm, but while there, they're not with Tom. Tom has basically already died in Whitebridge defending them from a Fade, and they're on the run trying to go to Camelin. Because Tom told them to go to Camelin, told them to go to an inn there and meet his friend Basil Gill, who would help them out. Now, in the series, Tom's still with them because he just met them not too long ago in Breen Spring, and they're stopping at a farm along the way with Tom. Now, instead of Rand and Matt figuring out they learn how to juggle and use a flute to pave their way to Camelin, what we see instead are some very brutal scenes here that are a departure from the books. They look really nice on screen, and it does kind of take the place of Whitebridge, but we'll get into that in a bit when we get to that part of the episode. Now, we get another little exposition dump here. They talk just a bit about shielding a man, how they can't see the flows, they can't see the male half of the true source, however they can feel it. And I think they use the words, it's like holding a cat in the bathtub, something along those lines. I really liked it anyway, I thought it was kind of funny. This is basically just another scene to showcase the differences between men and women channeling and the fact that they can't see it. That came into question much later in the episode, although there are some official explanations for that are out there from production, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But these particular scenes in between, they're just talking about how the male half of the true source works, how they can hold him with Sae'dar, and what happens and how they feel it. And we also get to see some cool little animations of them using the shields in their hands, and it parallels the shield around Logain. Now, this particular scene here is really heavy in foreshadowing, so essentially, throughout the series, Perrin has a choice between a hammer and an axe, and that all really starts in the first book. And it's showcased quite heavily. It's a large part of his character arc, and the way they're making him hate the axe in the show is the fact that he killed his wife with an axe. Now, I did suggest that maybe Lila would be a dark friend, and that would make him feel a little bit better about it later on. That's since been debunked by production, so production has basically said Lila was not a dark friend. The actress, Helena Westerman, who plays Lila, has come out on Twitter and said, I'm not a dark friend. So my theory there, completely out the window. But they do talk about this, and it's quite open. It's not even a little tidbit or a nod. It's the axe doesn't make you happy. And this whole scene with the Tinkers sets up another little tidbit of the scene later on where Perrin is repairing an axle on a cart with a hammer. And Ela is basically telling him, you're finding peace in the work, and that brings honor. It's like she's honored by that. And he's finding peace in using the hammer, doing work. The axe isn't doing so well for him. And the way the leaf has always had a special place in Perrin's heart in the book series, even though he knows that it's not practical, he would love everyone to live that way. And I think they're going to show him really torn in later episodes, especially the next episode, because I think I know what's going to happen to these Tinkers, unfortunately, when the way the leaf just really doesn't work for them. All right, now we're back at the Grinwell farm, and there's a bunch of different stuff to unpack here. It's all completely different from the books, so at this point, complete departure from the books, but done in such a way to make people think a few different things. So the first thing here we have Matt, and he was coughing up a bunch of black stuff that basically was alive. It looks a lot like Mashadar looked in Shadar Logoth in episode 2, and I think what they're doing here is they're really showcasing this on Matt, and this is his possible way of becoming the Dragon Reborn. So far we've had Perrin and his wolves, possible Dragon Reborn. We've had Matt and this weird darkness coming out of his mouth, possible Dragon Reborn. Nynaeve, she's not the right age, so she can't really be considered a Dragon Reborn, although they've mentioned it in the first episode. And Egwene as well, they've included her in this. So it's basically all of them. And they're doing this on purpose. It's misdirection, trying to make the regular viewer who haven't read the books basically think it could be anyone else. And let's face it, almost every non-book reader I've talked to, none of them are picking Rand as the Dragon Reborn right now because they're showcasing Rand the absolute least, and there's nothing really special or remarkable about him at this point. Kind of weird, but it'll make the reveal later on in maybe episode 7 or 8 when they do say that he is the dragon that much more shocking to people who weren't in the know. Now, this exchange here was between Else or Helga, depending on how you look at it. This is Robin Betteridge. She plays Helga Grinwell. She auditioned for the role as Else, did her lines as Else, and the subtitles still say Else. So she's Else Grinwell, although the credits call her Helga, and when they announced her in IMDb, they're calling her Helga. I think that's because what they're going to do is they're going to showcase Else later on, and they cast Robin as Else, and maybe want to use that character later, and they change things in post. That's entirely possible. But basically what they're foreshadowing in this little scene here is the fact that you have a doll that this little girl has that is the legendary archer that we see show up later on in the book series, who is one of the heroes of the Horn. Now again, that is a spoiler in some small way, shape, and form for later on in the book series, but it's not spoiling anything specific, so I know I'll hear some things about that in the comments. But she talks about her protecting her at night. Protecting her at night. She is a hero of the Horn that lives in the world of dreams in Teleran Rioid. I loved it. A little tidbit, a little bit of foreshadowing for us. Really loved that. And then we get into, after this, the story of Owen. And again, Tom does tell the story of Owen in the books, his nephew who could channel, although he doesn't get into the facts of why he wasn't there for his nephew. And that's the main reason why he helped Mat and Rand in the books, is because he's seen his nephew in them getting tied up in Aes Sedai troubles, and he wanted to help them. They did that in an abridged way here in this episode. I liked seeing it. I liked that nod to it. Some people said maybe the gentleman in the very first opening scene of the show was Owen. I don't think so. I believe that was a Terrabiner, but I don't know for sure. So let me know in the comments down below what you folks think. Was that Owen? I don't think so myself, but I want to hear what you folks think. Alright, so now we have one of those dream sequences. These are absolutely horrifying. We have Mat walking with this bloody hand. We had Perrin swinging an axe and beating away on what I believe to be his dead wife. I mean, it was a character under a blanket with a blonde braid. Some people thought it was a Tinker. Some people thought it was someone else. I think it is his dead wife. I think it's Lila. And then we have this, Egwene being grabbed by Ishamael, or the Dark One, because he thinks he's the Dark One at this point. And we get our first really good look at the Dark One here. And actually, I paused it at a really good spot. So these dreams, none of them happen the same way in the books, but they are all showcasing and driving the story forward in a different way. So what they're doing is they're showing dreams from each one of the characters' different perspectives, and it's kind of building the tension that any one of them could be the Dragon Reborn. So like I said earlier, up to this point, Rand has been rather unremarkable. This is his dream, he's having it, but he's dreaming of Perrin killing his wife. He's dreaming of Mat with bloody hands, and then he sees Egwene being taken by the Dark One. Again, little tidbits in all of their direction why those three could be the Dragon Reborn and not Rand. And that's all completely on purpose, because I think what they're doing is they're trying to build up that big reveal. Again, I've had a lot of people complain to me about this. Why do they do this? I didn't like it. If you're a book reader, you already know who the Dragon Reborn is, but non-book readers, every one of them I talk to, most of them are picking Egwene, Nynaeve, and Perrin. Very few of them are picking Mat or Rand, and I think because they think Mat is too on the nose and Rand is completely unremarkable. In fact, I've had a couple of people tell me that Rand is a throwaway character and they don't even know why he's in the series, which I kind of had a chuckle about that, and I won't ruin it for them. But that's why they're doing it in this way, I believe. Then we have this. We have the Fade in the rafters. Mat saying, "I see you," and the Fade comes out. Now, Tom fights the Fade here, and this is parallel to the fight in Whitebridge, where Tom basically rescues Mat and Rand and tells them to run. And they do. They book it right out of Whitebridge, and they don't look back, and they believe Tom is dead at that point. This is the exact same scene, only it happens at the Grinwell's farm. So again, like I said, they're taking different scenes, different elements, they're kind of mashing them together to streamline the book into something different while adding new scenes in. And the new scenes are mainly exposition dumps. They explain certain things, or they're expanding backstories of characters that people really like Logain. All right, now I have to include this scene here because it is a very touching scene between Daniel Henney's Lan and Zoe Robin's Nynaeve, and essentially they're kind of hinting a little bit at the fact that maybe Nynaeve is also Valkyrie. We don't know for sure here because she's an orphan like she is in the books. However, we don't know who her parents are in the show. It's changed a bit. Her backstory is completely different. And when they're talking here and the way they go about the stories, it kind of seems like maybe, just maybe, they're foreshadowing that just a bit. It would be a big change if they did that, but not a change that's a bad thing in my opinion. I think it would be really cool to find out that she is Valkyrie, that she is actually royalty, and the two of them wed, and they forge the Valkyrie people back together. I would really love to see that later on when the Golden Crane flies again, but I don't know for sure. That would be neat. Now this scene, we see the axes go through the shield, and then Logain's affecting the axes. There's been a lot of questions about this particular scene and the next one. So that particular scene where the axes went through the shield, I think what they're showcasing is that Logain was pushing the shield out from him, and as he pushes that shield out from him, he's not being cut off from the source inside. He just can't affect anything outside the shield. That's my guess. A little bit different than the book series, but I think that's how they're showcasing it visually. And then when Stefan jumped in with his axes, he pushed them through where the shield was at, and Logain was able to affect them with his one power, effectively heating them up. They turned black like the taint, and they went out like shrapnel and blew up on everybody. So there's been a lot of questions about why that is. I honestly think it's just a change they made to showcase the way the shield is, because in the book series, the shield just cuts them off from the true source, and that's it. It's talked about as a giant blunt axe, or an axe if they're trying to sever the person. Visually, that probably wouldn't look the greatest. I think this circle encapsulating them is probably a much better look visually, and that's a way they can get around him using the one power while he's still shielded, because he can affect everything inside that shield. Now, in the final scenes of the episode, this has been the talk of the town. So everybody's basically talking about it. Nynaeve gets angry. She gets really upset. She gets mad that everybody is hurt, and this happens. She basically goes Super Saiyan and casts regrowth. And so I made that comment in another video of mine, and people are like, regrowth? What's that? It's got nothing to do with the books. No, it's a World of Warcraft reference. The druids would cast regrowth. It's a healing spell that affected a bunch of people. I thought it was funny. Apparently some people didn't get it. Essentially what she's doing, she's healing everybody on screen at the same time. There's been a lot of different questions about this, how this could happen, and why is Logain shielding his eyes. Essentially, Sarah Nakamura, the book consultant, did a whole rewatch of episode 4 and answered a ton of questions from people, and her answer to this was he's shielding his eyes from the flying debris and the shockwave of her using the one power, because men can't see the female half of the true source and women can't see the male half of the true source. Someone else also had the question about how could she heal everybody on screen at once? There's no such thing as group healing unless they're all touching. Well, if you take a look at her right now, you see these big rough tendrils coming out on screen. Every one of those rough tendrils is touching someone different. Essentially, all she's doing is splitting the flows. That's it. She is healing a bunch of different people at once by weaving a bunch of different healing weaves all at the same time. Now, it's rough because she's untrained, she's a wilder, she doesn't know what she's doing, which is completely parallel with the books. She really has no idea what she's doing and doesn't consciously heal people until much later on, and in most cases, she needs to be very, very angry, because she needs to be angry to use the one power at all, because it is a block of hers that she has, and she usually needs her herbs as well. Although we're not showcasing that here, what they're showcasing is her anger and the roughness of the weave. Now, one of the other theories that have been put forth is the fact that because of the roughness of the weave and all the things she's doing here, maybe she's blasting out a bunch of light at the same time. It's a side effect of using the weaves. Entirely possible. There's a whole lot of speculation around this. I'm sure it just looked really good visually on the screen, and that's why they did it. Although the official explanation, Logain shielding his eyes and says she's as bright as the sun because of the debris and the shockwave. It's entirely possible. He knows she can use a vast amount of the power because of what she did. I don't know. Let me know what you folks think in the comments down below for this particular scene especially, because it's been the talk of the town. I mean, everybody on Twitter is talking about it, Reddit's talking about it, and a lot of people seem to dislike Sarah Nakamura's explanation. Again, the shot was blocked a certain way, and this is the way they filmed it. It's up to us to interpret it however we like, I guess, but the official explanation is the one I just gave you. So let me know what you folks think down below. Again, this has been a blast. I love doing these these breakdown videos, and essentially what I'm doing is I'm going between the differences between the book and the show, talking a bit about the scenes, and it's just me talking Wheel of Time. I'm sitting here and I'm having a great time talking about the Wheel of Time. I super love it. I hope you guys enjoy these ones as well. I like my Easter egg videos, maybe a smidge more, because I like diving much more in depth to things than I do like breaking them down, but I'm having a good time. So, I have a question for all you folks, and I want to hear about it in the comments down below. I am currently doing for every single episode a review, a breakdown, an Easter egg video, and a parent's guide. So, is there anything else you folks want to see? I'm also working on non-reader questions for each and every episode. I'm going to put them out probably later this week. So you'll see episode 1 and 2 maybe this week. You'll see 3 and 4 next week. I'm kind of holding off on them because I'm still getting a bunch of questions from different people come in about the first couple episodes because people haven't seen it yet, especially non-readers, because we're getting a wider audience than normal. But you're going to see that stuff too. Is there anything different you folks would like to see from me? So including all of that stuff, I'm also going to do regular news, so I'll do a news video at least once a week. I'm going to do any castings or leaks or other things that come out, rumors about the second season. All that's still going to come out for me because that's normally what I do here on the channel. But is there anything different you folks want to see? Let me know down below. All right, thank you so much for sticking with me here to the very end. Here's to many more.